All right, we are back here on the podcast. We are now into the Final Four. We had a lot of chalk. All four number one seeds through for the first time since 2008. Troy Mauriello, we promised people we would get better games this round, and I don't think we delivered.
Not really, no, especially not in the Elite Eight. We had really just the one good game, right? The Florida Texas Tech game, and really everything else kind of chalky, like you said, and kind of one team taking control early and kind of running away with it. But listen, we said it last week and we're gonna say it again. I mean, when you get the best teams that advance, hopefully that leads to better games. I think that these four teams that advanced were kind of far and away the best four teams for most of the season, if not all of the season. So hopefully that leads to some really, really electric and fun Final Four games.
Yeah, I mean, we said this last week, and we'll say it again here. We should have games here.
Keyword, yeah.
We should. We cannot,
Yeah.
like, I think we said we will have great games. I think we're going to modify this to should, considering how this tournament has gone.
Now, in fairness, the Sweet 16 on Friday had a couple of good games. Like Michigan State, Ole Miss was awesome. Auburn coming back, Purdue, Houston. Like there were three good games, at least in the Sweet 16 round. It was just the Elite Eight was just such a bummer. But I think Duke, Houston, Auburn, and Florida, especially Duke, Houston, and Auburn, they've kind of been far and away the three best teams in the country for a large portion of the season. And I think you kind of saw that on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, when you have these teams that like have won 34, 34, 34, and 32 games, that's absurd.
Uh-huh. Yeah, just look at the records, and I think I saw somewhere that the Torvik, the Bart Torvik model, this is Duke and Houston are the two best teams that they've ever had in that model. Like in history, that's number one and number two, and that just kind of shows you it's kind of how it played out, right? And you look at the two seeds this year. Michigan State was a very very good team. They have nothing to hang their heads about. My St. John's team was not on the level of these of a one seed, and it's just you go down the list of the two seeds, they were good teams, they were not on the level of the one seeds. Those four one seeds, Alabama, same thing, they had a good year, not a great year, or not a legendary year like these four number one seeds are having.
Yeah, the combined record of these teams, I was calculating it while you were sharing your thought here. They were combined 135 and 16 on the season, a combined winning percentage of 894.
It's crazy. And I mean, now Auburn struggled a little bit down the stretch, but like look at Duke since non-conference play, since conference play started basically. Look at Houston since Feast Week basically. Like these teams have lost one and two and maybe three games since conference play started, which was 3 months ago now. Like it's absolutely insane the runs that these teams have been on. And again, it didn't make for the most entertaining Elite Eight games, but at the end of the day, I would think it's going to make for some really awesome Final Four games.
Yeah, some of the numbers here. I mean, Houston, I think, has lost four times here. Three of them came in overtime. Duke's lost
Hmm.
since Thanksgiving. I mean,
Hmm.
Auburn had that stretch where they were like basically winning every week until they hit the last week of the season, lost like
Yeah,
4 games.
uh-huh. And
And
even Florida has won what, 13 or 4? Like Florida's won a bunch in a row too.
yeah, Florida, I mean, got red hot at the end of the season, won the SEC tournament.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, these are teams but it's been all year with these teams. I mean, basically from the start of the season, obviously we started with Kansas as preseason number one, but once the year really got going, we got into December and January. It was Duke, it was Auburn, and it was Houston, and it was Florida. It was those four. And again, like all or Alabama, was in the conversation. My team was got up to number five at one point. Michigan State was really good. Like, yeah, obviously there was some other teams that were in the conversation, but basically all year it was those four teams, and it kind of panned out that way.
Did pan out that way. Let's take a quick detour here to some of the big headlines in the college basketball world since we last talked here. Little movement on the coaching carousel here. Number one, Xavier filled by Richard Pitino, the son of Rick Pitino, and now we get Pitino versus Pitino twice a year. That's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I love the hire for Xavier. I think Richard Pitino is an awesome coach. Look at what he did in New Mexico, a program that was decent, but certainly was not at the level that he took them to. To be quite honest with you, I wanted him to be the head coach in waiting at St. John's. I was kind of hoping that he would hang on in New Mexico for a couple of years and then take over for Rick when he decides to retire. But I love the hire for Xavier, and it just I mean we're going to get to Kevin Willard in a second as well. it speaks to the awesome coaches in the Big East now. Like I think we talked about this last week as well. Like 10, 9, 10 of the coaches in the Big East are just amazing coaches. Probably, from 1 to 11, or at least 1 to 8 or 9. You'd be hard pressed to find a conference with a better, 1 to 8, 1 to 9 coaches.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the guys who are down towards the bottom of the list there on the Big East, and you got Kim English, who did really good things, like was done
Yeah.
at Providence here. You got Thad Matta at Butler.
hmm
You got Chris Holt.
Shaheen Holloway, Holtman, Shaheen Holloway, like yeah, these are still really good coaches, and they're like you said, they're 10, 11, 8, 9, 10, 11 in the Big East.
Yeah, it's an incredible conference here, and another one here, the Kevin Willard saga here. We got to talk about this for a minute here because this thing felt like I think we talked about how slimy some of the stuff that like Darian DeVries did last week.
Yeah.
This feels a lot worse because I mean you got him sitting on the podium when Maryland's in the Sweet 16 against Florida, basically saying, "I don't know what I'm doing." Like he gives the exact same line he did when he left Seton Hall for Maryland. He's
Yep.
like my agent may be talking, but I'm not talking. And then
Yep.
he hems and haws for 2 days, and then he leaks it to Rothstein at 1:43 in the morning on Saturday night. Like, I'm going to Villanova. There's a meeting in the morning with my guys that I'm leaving here. This is a terrible way to handle this.
Yeah, it was a horrible look, and when he's asked about if he has any regrets or if he would do it another way, and he said no. I mean, listen, being local guys and me being a Big East guy, saw Kevin Willard for years in Seton Hall, and that was kind of his personality. He was kind of a very dry type of guy that wasn't going to give the media a whole lot, and it can be very funny at times. I find Kevin Willard very funny at times in these post game pressers or dealing with reporters when you're winning, especially. But then when you pull a move like this, you kind of can't be that. I'm not going to give the media anything, and I'm going to pretend like nothing's happening. Like you can't do that. And it was a really really bad look for him. I mean, listen, who knows if they would have beaten Florida anyways? But that just seemed like it took a lot of momentum out of their team to do that to them, and it's not fair to the players. We talk about all the time player movement and how easy it is for guys to jump from one team to another. To do that to these guys who, had fought for you all season long. Think of the games that Maryland lost all season long on these buzzer beaters, and then to hit a buzzer beater to go to the Sweet 16, and then all week, we're not talking about the incredible buzzer beater by your freshman that's going to be a lottery pick. We're talking about if this coach is going to leave or if he's already basically agreed to sign a contract with another team. It's really everything that's kind of wrong with college sports when you get a coach that does that to his team. And unfortunately for Kevin Willard, it's kind of the second time that he's done that now. He did the same thing with Seton Hall 3 years ago. Just really, really not a good way to end things either way.
Yeah, that's the one thing you hate about the sport is like how Jay Bill has killed like Willard for this season. It's like, yeah, the coaches transfer is always open, and we've seen this a lot
hmm
for the past
Yeah.
years where you have these coaches basically they're out the door, and the team is trying to win a tournament game. Basically, seen the coach basically quit after halftime, whether it's Patino at Iona before he goes to St. John's.
Yep.
We saw it with Will Wade and McNeese, both games actually. He like if Clemson had not put up 13 the first half, they would have been out the first round. And then
Uh-huh.
here with Maryland here, where they play Florida Cup for a half, and like Willard kind of checked out at that point.
And I think you mentioned Will Wade. We talked about it last week. Like that was the perfect way to do it. Like just be honest. And you never see that with these coaches.
Yeah.
No one faulted Will Wade for I mean, obviously it's a lot different of a jump going Maryland to Villanova versus McNeese to NC State. It's a lot different, but still no one faulted Will Wade for making that move because he was completely honest with it from the start. Kevin Willard doing this, like you said, it feels slimy, it feels wrong, and it feels like it just doesn't feel right. And but the one thing is, if you're a Maryland fan, your school did this with Kevin Willard 3 years ago. Like we said, Seton Hall was in the exact same spot that Maryland was in this year, preparing for an NCAA tournament game, and Kevin Willard had 1 foot out the door already. So they kind of poached him in that way, and then they lost him in that same way. It's not really karma or anything like that because that's just how it goes. But if you're Villanova, who's to say that 3, 4 years from now, if a really big job doesn't open up and Kevin Willard is coaching you in the NCAA tournament, that he's not going to do the same thing to you.
Yeah, like let's say like a few years, like Rick Pitino decides I'm going to retire here. Like, would stop like St. John's and going up to Willard saying, "Hey, like, you want to follow your mentor and take his job?"
Yeah, and just judged by the last two exits that he's had from each, from Seton Hall and now from Maryland, he would be a guy that, at any time of the year, he's probably willing to talk to you. So it's a bad look for him for sure. And again, I like his personality because I think it really works. When everything is going well, it's really funny to me. But when it's a situation like this where you're taking a lot of heat, you can't be that guy that's gonna just, oh, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what you got. You guys are the crazy ones. I'm not crazy. You can't do that to the media. You got to give us something at some point. And he just, and again, to say you had no regrets, it's weird. And I'm curious what that intro press conference is going to look like.
Yeah, and also now you got him in the Big East against Patino, who like he has not been like the biggest fan of scheduling games. Patino, when like I know like when he was at Seton Hall, he didn't play Louisville that much, and then like,
Hmm.
I know they reluctantly played each other, and then like the second year
Hmm.
around, there's a COVID issue that caused the cancellation of the rematch. So like now he has to play him twice a year, still Richard twice a year. The Patino down with this conference.
Yeah, and it just adds to I'm like, that's the thing. Like, from a straight basketball perspective, it's a great hire for Villanova. And I think I saw this kind of floating around. Villanova it's definitely a top 20 job in the country, I would say, because they have all that money and they're willing to spend it on basketball. Like, we've seen now with the revenue sharing stuff going around, which I still don't fully understand all of that, but with the revenue sharing stuff going around, these Big East schools have money to spend, and they're going to spend it on basketball because they have no real football. Villanova has no football or they have football, but it's an FCS school to spend the money on. So they're going to want to spend money on college basketball. It's a really good job, and it's a good hire from a guy who makes the NCAA tournament. He did it at Seton Hall, and he's done it at Maryland 2 of the 3 years. So it's a good hire, and it just adds to the Big East. The exceptional coaching in the Big East, but again, just a weird exit for him.
Yeah, and Maryland also obviously there's no AD right now. They're in the middle of a
Yep.
search for one. I know he had gripes about like how
Yep.
they budget their money. Like I know like it's gonna be interesting to see what they do there. I've heard Buzz Williams is some of the early people throwing his hat in the ring over there. So
Yeah, and I mean, just how many coaches have we seen that have been in the NCAA tournament taking jobs elsewhere? I think I saw it was 8 guys in the NCAA tournament that have taken jobs elsewhere. It's just the carousel is always pretty crazy. I mean, last year was some of the craziest of all, but that seems like a very large number of guys to be on NCAA tournament teams, and while you're coaching in the tournament to essentially be looking at another job.
the cycle usually is more complicated when you have more like convoluted when you have like one of these big blue blood jobs.
Yeah,
Like last year, Kentucky sort of knocked all the dominoes down when they let Calipari
yeah.
walk, and then this year was
Uh-huh.
Indiana firing,
Indiana, yeah.
and then
Hmm.
Villanova to a lesser degree with firing Neptune, but.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
All right. A couple other things we want to talk about here, and one of our favorite topics here, the transfer portal is opened up here. We had, I think they said the first 2 years is over like 250 players in here. Over 700 players entered the portal on Monday, which is just like, I get that. I love the idea of freedom of movement is great. College kids are not we're punished for like wanting to explore their options. At the same time, here like it's hard to grow the sport when like every year your team could have like 8, 9 new guys in the line. It's very hard to build continuity that way.
Yeah, and I mean, you and I are more diehard college basketball fans. We're going to watch regardless. But I talk to people all the time that went to these big power conference schools and say, I can't get into it anymore because, like you said, every year it's 8 or 9 different new guys, and maybe if you return 4 or 5 guys, you're lucky. Gone are the days of guys playing 3, 4 years for your school and then graduating. It is a different world for sure, like you said, and whether it's good or not for the sport. Listen, the player movement is great. I think that there does need to be some guardrails put in. You got to have something. I think probably the best idea would be a one-time free transfer, and then if you want to go a second time, you have to have an actual reason for it. I think that's probably the best way to do it. Now, once you've given all that freedom to the players, though, will it look bad kind of taking that away? That's the question. But something has to be put in because you can't just have it like this where, and I mean, by the way, the tampering is crazy as well with how many guys are entering the portal. St. John just got a kid from Arizona State who entered the portal and then basically 24 hours later is committing to St. John's. Like, did that really all happen in 24 hours, or were we talking to that kid probably in February? Like, it's there needs to be something put in again. I like the idea of player movement, but when you have no real restrictions on it, it kind of leads to some chaos like we're seeing now.
Yeah, this is basically the equivalent of like everybody in the NFL on a 1 year contract. As soon as like the playoffs, like after you get to the walk around, okay, everybody can hit free agency right now. Who wants to go here? Who wants to go there? Like, I think the answer to this, like, if you're doing tying NIL money to this, like, no, like, if you want to, I think the idea should be okay, like, you want to commit here, commit for 2 years, or
Like
like
contract, yeah.
like,
Hmm.
like an actual contract and say, okay, if you want like 4 years, I'll give you this much money, and then like if you like want to break your contract, you have to give the money back. Sort of like I think that's the way you sort of solve the problem, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's all we hear now is, this is professional sports. These guys are professionals now. Like you said, yeah, give them contracts. If you want to sign a 4-year contract or a 3-year contract, I guess it would be, go right ahead. But you're not a free agent then from that point, because it's just right now there's no, like we said, there's just no guardrails put in whatsoever. These coaches are essentially recruiting their own players to stick around by the end of the season. And from the player's perspective, if you're worth anything, like if you average 5 points a game on a high major team, hit the portal and see what you can get. Like, it doesn't, like, there's no loyalty. These coaches clearly have no loyalty to you. Why do you have loyalty to the school? And when you bounce around, if you're on your third school already, how much loyalty do you really have to the school? Hit the portal and see what you can get. For a lot of these guys, it's going to be the most money that they'll ever make in a year playing college basketball. So I don't fault any players for doing that. I think, to be honest with you, it would be a good idea for every player to just declare themselves for the portal, or to enter the portal and see what they can get on the open market. And so I don't fault any players really.
No, I know. I think it's got to be Garlic put in here. I found a great graphic on Twitter. I'm going to share it
Oh,
on the video version here. This is from NCAA Buzzer Beaters here. This is a graphic map of where every team's Sweet 16
yeah.
I began playing college basketball here. Obviously, we got Purdue. We know Purdue because they have all their own guys, but like Michigan State two pretty solid, four, and they had the one transfer Apollo. But like, I mean,
Hmm.
some of these other schools, I mean, can you figure out, for instance, like like can you figure out who Florida
Yeah.
is, like who
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Maryland?
And and even the Duke one, like the Duke one is always only like that because it's all freshmen. It's not like that's, guys, 3, 4 year guys. That's all just freshmen. Yeah. And
Tyrese Proctor's in there. He's a junior.
yeah, yeah, but I did see someone put that graphic up. Maybe it was the same account, and they did it from like 5 years ago or from 6 years ago, I guess, to the 2019. And it was like, I think maybe one or two teams had multiple transfers, and like for the most part, it was like 13 or 14 of the teams had, I think, four starters that were on started their careers with that school. So it's just crazy the changes that we've seen in college basketball in such a short amount of time.
I mean, look here at Kentucky. Kentucky has nobody they started with.
Yeah, right. Look at that. That's. I mean, it's insane, and that's again, that's just how it is in college basketball nowadays. But yeah, you can't tell me that this is good for the sport when basically one team or two teams on this graphic are guys that have been there for a good amount of time.
Yeah, and those are two of the older school coaches left in Painter and Izzo.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, and speaking of the portal here, one of your guys, RJ Louis, hit the portal here, and like I don't know what happened there because I know like Patino he said, oh, like he's NBA ready, like do the best thing for him, and like I felt to me just reading the tea leaves that felt like especially that they already had a guy coming from Arizona State, they're heavily linked to Bryce Hopkins. To me, this kind of felt like okay, we've got what you want out of you. You can go now, get out the door.
Essentially, yeah, and in all the reporting, Zach Braziller said it was kind of a mutual thing. It wasn't RJ deciding to leave. It was more of a kind of a mutual decision that I think both sides felt like they got all they could out of the relationship. Everything that I've heard, and I'm not going to act like I'm some insider on St. John's basketball, but everything that I've heard is that RJ wants to be a pro, and I don't know if he necessarily wants to play another year of college basketball for his senior year. Even if he has to be a two-way player, he wants to play in the NBA. But I think him entering the portal is essentially him covering his bases. Right now he's not really on many draft boards. He's probably at best right now mid to late second round pick. He's hoping that he can kind of shoot up and maybe become impress enough in workouts that he can become a late or a early second, late first round type player, and then obviously make some real money in the NBA. But if that doesn't happen, if he doesn't get the feedback that he wants from NBA scouts, he can go back to college now. And like I just said, on the open market, RJ Lewis is going to get an insane amount of money because he's the best player in the portal. He's the Big East player of the year. So it looks kind of crazy, but I think it's more just him covering his bases. From the St. John's side, St. John's doesn't have that luxury to wait, 2 months for RJ Lewis to make a decision if he wants to play in the NBA or not. They have to build a roster right now because, like you said, this is like free agency, and a lot of these guys are going to be, signed to new schools within the next month or so. St. John's can't afford to be waiting for a month to see what its roster is going to look like. So there was some weird stuff going on. Of course, the benching against Arkansas was definitely one of the weird things, and then Rick Pitino not really wanting to talk about RJ in the post game press conference was definitely weird. But I think it was almost there was a lot less personal decisions, and this is just a very business decision from RJ Lewis and from St. John's that led to this kind of a breakup after such an incredible year.
Yeah, it's true here. And you feel like also with him, he looks at his options. He's probably gonna go to the combine, see like if he can impress
Mm-hmm.
the team. They get a guarantee from somebody, say, hey, like if you're here, like in the second
Yep.
round, I'll pick you. But like if he's a guy, it's like if his options, okay, do I go the Danish Jenkins route, get a two-way contract with somebody, or do I
Mm-hmm.
take a couple mil to play for like Kentucky? Do I do that?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, think about like the amount of money that he would get. That would be because if he's going to be 23 years old now next year. Like if he's going to be in the NBA draft combine and in the NBA draft, and he's let's say a mid to or like late second round pick this year, he's probably not going to shoot up many draft boards next year, another year older, as a year older prospect. So this would probably be the most lucrative year, that he's ever going to have playing basketball, at least in America. If he can make 3-4 million on the open market playing for, like you said, an SEC football school like Kentucky or something like that. So I can't fault him. It's going to be he has options right now, and I can't fault him for doing that.
Yep. And then one last thing I want to touch on here is that we got some news last week from, I believe, CBS's Matt Norlander had this year about the Players Era Festival expanding to 32 teams in 2026. And this is the big NIL preseason tournament that, like, it was a non-conference season in November. It was a big thing in Vegas this year. They have, I think, the 16 teams. They're going up to 18 this year. They're targeting 32 teams for 2026. It sounds like the idea is they're going to be group play at different sites across the country. And then they're going to use results of group play to break into four brackets over Thanksgiving week in Vegas. So basically, four separate 18 pods is determined by how group play goes. So to me, this thing, I know they're trying to make this November Madness and have this whole thing where like we
Hmm.
want to, have a big event at the start of the season and a big event at the end of the season, March Madness. So I
Hmm.
get the logic of this, but like I think to me this is going to further separate the haves and the have-nots here because like if you're like a top-notch player and like you are making NIL money already and the school you're weighing three schools and one is in NIL player festival,
Yep.
one isn't, like why would I not go to the school where I can get even more money compared to like somewhere else that's just, oh, I get a trip to Maui.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I saw the list. Maybe it was only the 18 team list that I saw, and I think the only mid-major in there was St. Joe's. I think
Yep.
the other 17 were all power conference schools. So that's the thing is they're expanding, and when you have the 32 team NCE next year, how many of those are going to be power conference schools, right? 30, 31. Like it's going to be all power conference, and then maybe they'll throw a bone to one or two mid majors. Yeah, like you said, it just further separates. And like we were talking about, outside of this, it kills the other MCs. Maui, Atlantis. Like, why would schools want to go there when there's or why would players want to even play it in those when you can go to one that's going to give you NIL money and give your school NIL money. It kind of just kills non-conference scheduling too, right? Like if you're talking about a Champions League thing where you're in group play and then you're in different brackets, like how many non-conference games are we talking there? Like, you don't really get those cool, Auburn traveling to Duke to playing Cameron Indoor. Like you're probably not going to get those unless they're playing those on campus sites. I don't know, but it kind of kills non-conference scheduling too.
Yeah, the Auburn Duke thing I think is different because that's some of the stuff is like contracted, sort of like where it's the ACC SEC challenge, the Big East
Hmm.
Big 12 battle. Those are like contracted. Like I think you'll lose some of those like home and homes that like teams will
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I mean,
Hmm.
like, you don't have like there are not many coaches like Nate Oates who is willing to go to North Dakota and bring Alabama there. Like a lot,
Hmm.
it's gonna further separate these other schools. Say, you know what, like if you like our non-conference game is gonna be the Players Center Festival or some big NIL event, whatever we're contracted in for the league, and then we're gonna invite like seven D quad three schools at home and crush them.
Exactly. Yeah, that's going to be the future of non-conference scheduling. Like you said, there's going to be no more home and homes. There's going to be no more. Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, you might see the the ACC, SEC, and what is it, the ACC, Big Ten. Yeah, like you'll still have those, of course, but those are TV contracts. Yeah, you're not going to see any more. Let's challenge ourselves and go on the road and play this tough road game. That's it's not going to happen anymore because you're so much of your schedule is taken up by this players festival.
Yeah, this is why I respect like the Nate Oateses. I respect the Izzo
Yeah.
who are willing to challenge themselves. Like everybody else is gonna take the easy way out.
Yeah, exactly. And this gives you even more reason to take the easy way out when you say, "Oh, look, we got 6 games in this that are all going to be against tough teams. Why would we schedule anyone else?"
Yeah, I have the list for 25 for the Players Era Festival here. So right now it's Alabama, Auburn, Baylor, Creighton, Gonzaga, which is going to be Pac-12 at this point, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Michigan, Notre Dame, Oregon, Rutgers, San Diego State also going Pac-12, St. John, Syracuse, Tennessee, Texas A&M, and the pity invite to St. Joe's out of the A-10.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's all yeah, like you said, even the schools that are not currently in power conferences are going to be in power conferences starting next year. And yeah, the one like you said, the one pity invite when it goes to 32, it's going to be 30 of 32 high conference, high major, and then maybe one or two mid majors.
Don't forget, too, I'm sure Nike's going to bring back that Phil Knight thing and tie it to NIL at some point also, because that was a big thing 2 years.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and that was again all high major big money schools.
Yeah, so that's what we got coming up here in the college basketball world here. But let's get back to this tournament here. So, as we mentioned before here, like Sweet 16 was okay for some games. Like the Elite Eight, we had the great opener and then three kind of duds where like
Mhm.
you had these couple of big runs or separate these teams early on. Like I think you really could pinpoint each of the league games. Like, okay, here's where this really separated, and then like you kind of had the fake comebacks at points, and then we never really got close.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, how about Houston against Tennessee? 15 points in the first half. Houston just threw that punch really right at the start of that game, and Tennessee never really threatened in that game. Houston had them kind of at an arm's length. Michigan State even had that long scoring drought in the first half, where like if you're going to go on it's just so hard to go on a scoring drought against a team like Auburn, and I mean Duke as well. Same kind of thing. Yeah, like but all three of those games, it was like it wasn't a complete blowout, but it wasn't really a good game either. It wasn't necessarily an entertaining watch. Obviously, we had the one awesome Florida Texas Tech game with the comeback, but again, I think it just speaks to how good those three teams were. Where like Michigan State, Alabama, these were Tennessee, these were all really good teams. The number one in the country at one point. Really good teams just were not quite on that level of the historically good teams that we have in Auburn, in Duke, in Houston, and in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, let's wait. Tennessee pulled the Clemson, where they just didn't show up for a half and couldn't had no
Yeah.
time to come back. Michigan State, like the 17-0 run in the first half that Auburn went on, like they're down 23-8, and I bet Michigan State can't score. Okay, that's a really big hill for you to climb here. And Alabama, like they were hitting shots for a bit, but like Duke is people think of Cooper Flag and the offense, but the physicality at Duke has a defensive end is that was a problem that Auburn had Alabama had all year was they cannot deal with these teams that can bully them on the offensive end. So like that's a problem.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean Duke's size was such a problem for Alabama. I think every guy really who plays for Duke is I think 6'5" or 6'6" and taller. And yeah, Alabama just dealing with that size was just too much for them. And when you're an NBA style 3-point shooting team like Alabama is, when they fall they fell at a historic level against BYU, you're going to look awesome. And when they don't really fall like they did against Duke, Mark Sears had a really rough outing against Duke. It leads to some lopsided results in either direction for them. And yeah, like you said with Michigan State, the second you give up a 17-0 run and you're down by what 15 early in that game, it's just for a team like Michigan State, it kind of felt like Michigan State and St. John's paralleled each other all year long. when you're in that hole, it's when you're not a 3-point shooting team, it's so hard to dig yourself out. You can play defense, and they did, and they really hung with them for a majority of that game. Michigan State did after that run, but it's so hard to gain ground where you're essentially trading 3 for 2.
Yeah, pretty much here. So let's go region by region real quick here. So the West region here, start with the wild ride of Texas Tech here, where they have, they're down 16 at one point in the second half. We have CBS putting the graphic on the screen. Oh, John Calipari, like it's like something like he's never lost a Sweet 16. He's up 10 in the second half. They have the big comeback, they have the game tying shot, and Arkansas is this miserable end of the overtime where they can't get a good look, and Calipari takes timeout in his pocket, leaving it.
Oh,
That was a crazy end to that game.
yeah, yeah. How does that like? It's so easy to say in hindsight. And I think Cal said it as well. Like, obviously now I wish I would have called timeout, but if we would have scored, I wouldn't have cared. But I think you got to call a timeout there. And he's not the type of coach that's going to do that. He's going to let his players. But what a bummer for Arkansas and Texas Tech. Just all the emotions of March. In a what a 2 day span essentially, or 3 day span. The crazy comeback on Thursday night, like you said, down 16 in the second half. You rally back, you win this game when it looked like all was lost, and then you're minutes away, what 4 or 5 minutes away, 9 point lead from a Final Four against Florida. You're about to do it. You're about to pull this crazy upset, and you just let it go away. And I mean, Florida's shot making was incredible down the stretch. Walter Clayton, Iona guy, just what a game from him. What a tournament from him. What a season from him. Turning into just an absolute star of this tournament. Walter Clayton has hit big shot after big shot, and he hit a couple there just to rip Texas Tech's heart out. So yeah, what a tough run of emotions for them.
Yeah, the Texas Tech thing is wild here. As you get to the game where they were up 9 late against Florida here, and Todd goes the very unconventional thing. He starts fouling early because I got to extend this game, and then Texas Tech
Yeah.
kept missing front ends of free throws. Then Florida finally started hitting shots, and that's one of those wild things where it's a very unconventional strategy to start fouling that early, put Texas Tech on the free throw line. But when you have guys like JT Toppin missing front ends and
Yeah.
you have all of a sudden bang, 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 bang. It's you're shit. Like all of a sudden you look up the game, Florida's on three. Like what happened?
Uh-huh. Yeah, and they're the Texas Tech, those fans, I feel for them because they're going to look at the back-to-back missed front ends of 1-and-1s. I mean, that is it's such a momentum killer when the other team is hitting shots and they're starting to make a run, and you miss a front end or one of the 1-and-1, and then they just come back down and hit a three. Like you said, it was just such a barrage from Florida because of those missed front ends. They're essentially like turnovers, when you miss them. And Florida's shot making was incredible in that game, and credit to them because they hit some huge shots.
Yeah, I want to talk about Walter Clayton deeper here in detail because obviously, I'm very familiar with him because I worked with Ion Athletics for a bit. I watched Walter Clayton up close for 2 years before he transferred out and went to Florida. So I knew this guy was good. What he's doing in Florida is absolutely incredible in terms of coming a clutch shot maker, a leader of a team. He's been delivering dagger after dagger in March Madness here. And you look at NBA draft boards and sitting there, oh, second round pick, not tall enough. To me, this feels a lot sort of Jalen Brunson disrespect ish from the NBA, where
Yeah.
6'5" says 6'3" is a lottery pick. That's the way I look
Hmm.
at it. And I think you look at the fact that Iona 2 years ago had an NBA backcourt with him and Danis Jenkins, and they had Nelly Jr. Joseph down low. The fact that team, they draw anybody but UConn. They're in the Sweet 16 that year.
For sure. And I was reminded on Twitter today, not me personally, but I saw someone tweet this that us St. John's fans were arguing with Iona back in the day that the Posh Alexander Andre Curbelo backcourt was better than Danis Jenkins and Walter Clayton. So that's a big loss for the St. John's fans there. I think that Iona wins that one pretty handily. But yeah, in terms of Walter Clayton, man, what a story! Coming from not being a crazy recruit, was a football player in high school. Plays at Iona, then becomes one of the biggest transfers of the transfer cycle 2 years ago. Made his name in Florida, and like you said, I mean the fact that he's not higher on draft boards is crazy. If you don't think that this kid is going to be an NBA pro for a long time, you're crazy. I just think when you have that level of shot making, and like you said, that leadership, this guy's going to be on an NBA roster probably for the next 15 years. It would not surprise me at all. He's that good, and he's NBA ready right now. So I'm really looking forward to where his career goes because he's had such a crazy rise in the last couple of years alone.
Yeah, and think of, I mean, he had like football like offers from like Notre Dame and Georgia. Like that's how good a football player he was. And Patino got him for basketball. And that sort of started this whole ride.
Yeah, and that speaks to Patino as well, like that the vision of seeing a guy like Walter Clayton, getting him to Iona, like that kid right away from the start should have been playing at an SEC Power Five school, and he spent a couple of years at Iona. It's just it's crazy the fact that Rick Pitino was able to find him, and then now he goes on to bigger and better things.
And you're St. John's fans, you're probably sitting here thinking about the what if game. Like, what if he could have followed Patino to Jamaica instead of going to Florida?
And you see these interviews of him, and he's saying, I was so close to following Rick, but I ended up picking Florida. I think he had some family in Florida that he wanted to be close to, and that was kind of the reason why. Man, would have just completely changed the trajectory of St. John's. More so last year when we missed the tournament, but this year, I mean, we would probably be playing this weekend if we had Walter Clayton.
Yeah, that's true. Let's go to the East region here. We can start off here a little bit like the offensive output on Thursday. We mean that both teams in Newark score over 100 points. Like Alabama just could not miss threes. They hit 25, set a new tournament record for a game, and it's insane to watch this. Like some of this offense here. Like I mean, poor BYU was doing the best they could, and like it got to the point where Alabama could have beaten them just on threes and free throws. That's just literally insane. And then Duke just does Duke things and put up 100 points on Arizona when Caleb Love puts up 35.
Yeah, you talk about the Alabama game. I think we said last week, it was like first to 90 is going to win, and it ended up being first to 100 is going to win that game in terms of Alabama. But yeah, just watching that Alabama BYU game, it felt like I was watching an NBA game. Like the level of shot making was absolutely incredible. The amount of three pointers attempted was absolutely incredible. And from Alabama's perspective, just a crazy performance from them. It would have been cool to kind of see them keep it up, maybe not to a historic level, but to keep it up a little bit better to give Duke a little bit more of a scare. But nonetheless, that's a game that we're going to remember forever. When Alabama made 25 threes in a game, and Duke, when we've seen Duke all season long, what their offense did against Arizona was phenomenal, and then I thought what their defense did against Alabama was probably more impressive, to be honest.
Yeah, the Nate Oates conversation is fascinating too because Nate Oates plays Alabama like they're an NBA team because their entire thing is threes and layups. We do not take
Mhm.
mid-range shots. I think this at one point they're going into like this elite. They think they go score like 2 points on mid-range jumpers the entire tournament, which is wild thing about a year. But like it's crazy because like that's the way. Like it's good if you want to be a pro to go play for him because he gets you ready for it. But like in this one and done tournament, it's very hard to like be that hot 6 games in a row. Where if you lose once.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Like I mean, now granted, you're not going to need a 25 for 51 game or whatever it was to advance every round. But yeah, that's just the chances of you running into a game where you shoot, what was it, 8 of 32 or something like that from three, it's going to bite you eventually. And for a team like that, it's just like you said, when they just do not shoot mid range and they only shoot either layups or threes, it's so hard to overcome that when they're just not falling. And against Duke, they weren't falling. I don't think they were beating Duke either way, but maybe that game's a little bit closer. If they play a different style, but that's just not how they operate.
Yeah, and this is something I'm very curious about to watch the next few years. I know NATO's gonna have every job available he wants. If somebody wants him to leave Alabama, but like, I wonder if at some point the NBA comes calling for him because I feel like he's a perfect fit for what the NBA is doing now.
Yeah, yeah, it's essentially coaching, like you said, an NBA roster right now in college, and he's got the play style down. Yeah, it would be very very interesting to see because, like you said, I don't think that he's like what college job is he going from Alabama to? Because we have all that money in Alabama. I don't see him leaving for a college job, but the NBA is certainly an interesting option for him, which I would assume is going to come calling at some point.
Yeah, because I mean, we've seen some coaches do the NBA to college thing. I know Brad Stevens did it for a bit. The Celtics successful there. Like
Yep. Hmm.
terms of the college level, the one I would watch very closely is I feel like if Izzo retires in time, I think the Spartans will go hard for NATO's.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. And I mean, do you think Izzo, like, how many years would you say he has left?
I mean, he doesn't seem to be worn down by this portal thing.
No.
As guys like Jay Wright were and Tony
Hmm.
Bennett was like, he seems like he could go forever. Like he feels because like, he wants that second title very badly.
And if he was gonna retire, he would have done it by now. Like he's got nothing else to prove at this point in the college ranks. Yeah. So like if he was gonna retire, it would have probably been in the last couple of years. But yeah, that's an interesting one. Just, yeah, it all depends on the timelines. If the timelines match up, I think Oates would be certainly one that they call.
Yeah, I think so too. Let's go to the Midwest here. Obviously, the Houston Wild ride, where like they have to play basically road games back to back against Purdue and
Yeah.
Tennessee. They win at the buzzer with a tremendous inbound play called by Kelvin Sampson on that last one. That was fantastic. Purdue was not ready for it. And then Tennessee, like, sort of does the same thing where Tech where they stuff Kentucky in one game and get stuffed in the next game.
Exactly. Yeah, and in terms of Houston, I mentioned it last week. The one of the most impressive runs to the Final Four that you're going to get from a one seed. Like again, playing Gonzaga in the second round, a team that by Ken Palm was a top 10 team in the country, and you get them in the second round. And then what's your reward for winning that game? Oh, you got to play Purdue in Indianapolis, a road game against Purdue. And then what's your reward for that game? Oh, you get to play Tennessee, who was number one at some point this season, and that's also essentially a road game. And then what's your reward for that? Now you get to play Duke. It's been absolutely insane. If they win this, it's going to be one of the greatest runs to a title we've ever seen. And I think you got to start considering this team up there with some of the all-time greats if they get through this and they get through Duke, and then if they get through either Alabama or Auburn or Florida in the national title game. But already just an incredible run, an incredibly difficult run for a one seed that you never really see to get all the way to the Final Four.
Yeah, it's a wild run for them here. And Tennessee, I mean, Rick Barnes is going to never escape this thing. Like, my team's come up swole. He's got back-to-back Elite Eights. I mean, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
how do you get to this point, put up 15 points in the first half? Like, how does that happen?
It's crazy, and I don't think that the criticism of him is going to be as strong. And I think last year they lost to Purdue in the Elite Eight, and now this year they go down to Houston. So they've gone down to two teams that were one seeds and that were at the top of their game. But yeah, I mean those questions just have to keep getting asked until he wins, until he gets it done. Uh, I know how good Houston is defensively, but Tennessee had some looks in that game. Like it wasn't like they were covered on every single possession. They had some open shots and they just couldn't get them to fall. So part of that goes on the coaching as well.
Yeah, it's for sure. I don't think there's anything else really to add here on this region. So I think we should go to the South region here. I mean, we got the great game in this round in Michigan State and Ole Miss was a thriller. Auburn's second half
Yep.
comeback here. This is one where, like, I felt this sort of coming Michigan State where they had the issues with New Mexico for a while before they pulled away. They had the issues with Ole Miss where they got hot in the
Yep.
second half. Like, their whole thing was sort of like, okay, we're gonna, hang in there the first half. We don't mind if we're behind. We came from behind, like, I think double digits 8 times in the season, which is insane. And then
Mhm.
have our depth will wear you down, and we'll just make enough baskets, play enough defense here. Like, when you run to a team as many playmakers as Auburn has, it's very hard to play that way when you can't shoot threes.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like we were saying before. Like it's just when you're trading 3 for 2 on so many possessions, it's so tough. And this again is that parallel of Michigan State and St. John's. Like same thing for my team. Like it was, let's keep it close in the first half and then kind of try to pull away in the second half or get some momentum in the second half. Michigan State was that same way, like you said. But when you're playing a team like Auburn, it's so tough. Oh, we're down. What was it, down 9 at the half? Okay, we can come back. Like against a lot of teams, yeah, you can because, like you said, you'll wear them down. Your depth will wear them down. Your defense will wear them down. Your rebounding will wear them down. Auburn, that's not going to happen because they just have too high level of shot making. It's just not going to happen. But for Michigan State, again, a great year. You just ran into a team that it wasn't going to happen. If you found yourself in a hole, Michigan State needed to kind of be controlling the tempo and the flow of that game to have any sort of chance.
Yeah, and that game, it felt like obviously the run put them behind, but like
Hmm.
it was like sort of I watched that game and I'm like a Spartan like fan, so like I'm watching this closely. But I started here like it never felt like they could get closer than like 7 points. There was like one sequence in the second half where they had like three offensive rebounds in a row, couldn't get a basket, go down the other way.
Yeah.
Auburn hits a three. Like, okay, that's it.
Yeah, it's such a backbreaker too, right? Because like you said, when you're a team that doesn't really shoot a lot of threes, you're chipping away, you're chipping away, you're chipping away. You're not going on these 12-0 runs in a minute and a half because you're not equipped to do that. You're not equipped to shoot threes. So you're chipping away over a 3-4 minute stretch. and then they just hit a backbreaking three against you, like you said. There was one later in the game too. I think they had got it down to 8 with like maybe 5 minutes to go or 4 minutes to go, and just like a backbreaker three to get it back up to 11. And it's just from that point, it's so hard. That's when you play that style, it's really tough.
Yeah, and even like you give them credit, they are basically fighting to the end. But like even like they teased at the end a little bit, they got down to 6, but then like
Yeah.
they couldn't hit that. They had like they got fouled and could not hit either free throw. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
it's not your day.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, they put up an awesome fight. I think what I said at the start of this is just those the four teams, the 4-1 seeds were just on a different level. Michigan State was absolutely probably a top 5 team to be honest with you, but certainly a top 5, top 6 team in the country this year. They were the best team in the Big Ten for sure this year. But at the end of the day, they just were not on the level of the top 4 teams this year.
I think you put this Michigan State team in last year's bracket. I think they're in the Final Four.
For sure. Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think you could say that you could say that about Alabama as well. I think you put Alabama in last year, they're probably a Final Four team.
Well,
Now again, with
they were there
go
last
ahead.
year, already, so this is the same thing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I'm saying like this version of them, last year would have also been in the Final Four. But yeah, Michigan State for sure. You can say that about quite a few teams this year that I think, Tennessee as well. Like they would have been in the Final Four for sure.
Yeah, and just to back up the historic nature of the season here, the Field 68's posted a great tweet. I'm gonna throw it up here. These are the 10 best Ken Palmies ever since he started the metric. 4 of them are this year's Final Four teams.
Yeah, yeah. It speaks to how insane the 4 best teams were, and I mean Duke is on another level, and look at Houston, number 6 as well.
I mean, look also here. National champion 2000
Yep.
Duke, national champion 24 UConn, national champion
Hmm.
08 Kansas,
Hmm.
the Kentucky team that was undefeated going to the Final Four.
Yeah.
Gonzaga team was undefeated in the national title game,
Yep.
and the 99 Duke team that was probably one of the best teams to never win if they got upset by UConn. So this is the kind of company we're playing with here with these 4 teams.
Exactly. You have absolutely, yeah. Like that's so. There's going to be what 4 teams on there that either weren't undefeated going into the Final Four or didn't win at all, and 3 of them are going to be from this year, this season. It's incredible.
Yeah, and we got now 2 elite Final Four matchups here. So we'll start with the early game here. The Florida Auburn game. These teams met once in the regular season that was in Auburn. Florida won by 9. Clayton had 19 points. Alex Condon had 17 points. And this snapped a 14 game winning streak for Auburn at the time here. They did not meet in the SEC tournament because Auburn gets upset. So interesting here that this is that this sort of the SEC championship game we never got, and we're getting in the Final Four.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I was trying to think at the end of the Auburn game. I was like, did Florida and Auburn play in the SEC title game? All these games or did they play in the semifinals? They all kind of mix around. But yeah, it's a very very interesting matchup. I think I like Florida in this game. I think that they've been the best team now for quite some time in this tournament. So I know Auburn's the overall number 1 seed, but I still think I'm gonna reluctantly pick Florida. But going in like these 4 teams, I could see any 4 of them winning, and it wouldn't shock me. So it's really just a toss up.
Yeah, the thing I'm watching here is like how Johnny Broom feels this week because we
Yeah.
saw him late in that Michigan State game where it looked like he hyperextended both his elbow and his ankle. He came
Hmm.
back in playing on adrenaline. It looked like when he was coming back in the second half, X-rays were negative, but like you could tell he was kind of favoring the arm at one point. Like they were taking him out when it was a defensive possession here.
Hmm.
He has 5 days to rest up, but like if he is not full strength Johnny Broom, I think it's a lot harder for Auburn to win this game.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And when he went down, I was like, what is the injury? He looked like he hurt his ankle, hurt his elbow. Yeah, it was like, what is the actual injury? But I mean, great sign that he came back in for sure. But like you said, who knows if that was just an adrenaline thing? We'll see how he feels tomorrow now. As a college basketball fan, you want to see him play, of course. Like you want the best matchup possible, and it would be real tough for Auburn to win that game if he's not out there.
Yeah, you want to see the SEC superstar showdown between Johnny Brewer and Walt Clayton in that game.
Exactly. Yeah. And let's hope that we get, a 3-point game with 2 minutes to go and these 2 teams are battling out. And one of these teams is not just so much better than the other one that it ends up being a blowout. But I don't see that happening.
Yeah, and the last game, here, Duke Houston is the nightcap here. Houston finally gets to play in front of its fans. They have the 3 hour drive from Houston to San Antonio at the Alamo Dome. They're going to be in here, rugged defensive game against, while against, according to the Ken Palm, like the one of the best Duke teams of all time, Cooper Flag here. This game is going to be fascinating to see how this plays out.
For sure. And I was running down the Houston path to the Final Four, and I conveniently left out that hey, you're playing Duke, you're playing one of the best teams of all time, but you're playing them 3 hours from where you are, from your campus. So it is going to be. I don't think it'll end up being a home game for Houston because the Final Four is such an event. But you should have at least somewhat of a home court advantage, and you'll certainly have it's what, a 3 hour drive, so you'll have that in your back pocket, but yeah, man, like does that Houston defense, can they slow down Duke? Because I mean Houston's offense has been very, very impressive this year as well. More so than we've ever seen. Their 3-point shooting has been phenomenal this season. Can the Houston defense shut down Duke is going to be my question, because I don't see Duke scoring 15 points and a half in this game. I don't see that happening. So we'll see if Houston can slow them down. I guess I would go with Houston, but I'm again very reluctantly.
Yeah, for me, Duke is the favorite in this tournament. I think they still are the favorite in this tournament. I think Florida, I think, gives them a lot of matchup problems. They have a lot of different ways to score. Houston, I'm
Hmm.
worried. Like Houston, I think has to keep that game low scoring if they're going to win that game, get I think if Duke is able to execute their offense, they have way more firepower than Houston does.
Exactly, yeah, and I mean, yeah, you just talk about like 1 to 5, like Duke can score in such a variety of different ways. Houston can shoot the ball this year, they can, but yeah, can they slow them down, and can they keep it from being a track? Because like Houston wants to play it slow. They want to take every second off the shot clock that they can. They want that game to be in the 60s or even the 50s. They don't want to be playing in the 80s and the 90s. And if that game's in the 80s and the 90s, it's going to favor Duke for sure.
Yeah, all you need to know is that game, Houston 360 tempo nationally, according to Ken Palm, which tells you they want
Uh-huh.
this thing played and like they want this game in the 60s. Duke wants it in the 80s.
And I honestly, I feel like you'll kind of know where this game's gonna go in the first like 5 minutes. Like you'll kind of see where this game's gonna go. Like, is Houston taking the air out of the ball? Are they limiting turnovers? They went such a long stretch against Tennessee without even committing a turnover. Like, can they hold on to the ball? Can they hit some shots? Can they force Duke to take some time and not have run up and down the court? Like, you'll kind of find it out in the first like 5 minutes of this game, what kind of pace this game's going to be played at, and then that'll determine who it's going to favor.
Yeah, it'll be a fascinating Final Four for sure here. And obviously, we'll be back. Like, there's not enough time to record between the national title game and between the Final Four and the national title game. So I'll give an update on the next pod because I'm going to be doing a Masters preview on Sunday. I'll give my thoughts on the Final Four games as they pop up here. But one thing I wanted to leave here with us with here, note that they listened to us fine. They moved the title game up 30 minutes from 9:20 to 8:50. I mean, I still think there's room to go to 8:30. I still think that's the ultimate time, but they listened to us finally.
It's getting better, yeah. And the game's not going to end at midnight now on the East Coast unless we have a crazy, triple overtime game. Yeah, we actually will have a game ending at a somewhat reasonable time on the East Coast. So yeah, let's push it up. Maybe let's keep that direction going for next year as well. Because this is going to be one you want to see. This is not going to be. This is going to be one seed versus one seed, top 10 team all time versus top 10 team all time. So this is, very, very thankful for that for sure.
Yeah, I feel like if it's successful rating wise, I think next year being on TBS, they'll try the 8:30 and see
Yeah,
what they do before they push it back to CBS at 8:30. I think CBS, I think my hunch is they wanted to have like a half-hour sitcom first and then have a 20-minute pregame show.
for sure. Yeah, yeah. So, but I mean, listen, and this is one to get a big rating. Like, if there's everyone that's going to get it, it's this one. The tournament ratings have been crazy good all year. Good chance you have Duke in there. Duke versus whoever is going to draw a crazy rating. So, let's hope that this trend continues for next year.
Duke against either SEC team is going to be bonanza ratings for CBS.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, Houston versus Auburn, Houston versus Florida is decent, I think, but not Duke. Duke is another level.
CBS is wearing the Duke blue on Saturday night, hoping the Blue Devils get through.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, because like you said, against either one of those teams, it's a monster rating for them.
Yeah, I personally I want the Duke Florida game. I had it in my bracket. That's probably the best part of my bracket here. I had Sparty in the Final Four. Then once I got to saw the Sweet 16 game, I'm like, I don't feel so good about that. But I feel like Duke, Florida. We've been destined for that collision course.
I think so too. I think that would be an awesome game. I think Duke and Houston though is such a toss up. I mean, again, I've been saying this. I think all these games are just complete toss ups. You could tell me any one of these four teams wins, and I would not be shocked. I do want to see Florida though, because I think Florida's a little bit better than Auburn. So I would like to see Florida in that final, and against either one of those teams would be awesome.
Yeah, I want to see like Walter Clayton, starting in Iona, ending up in a national championship game for Florida. That'd be fun.
That would be again quite the college career, starting as a football recruit and ending up as a national champion would be absolutely incredible.
Yeah, playing your home games from 3,000 fans in New Rochelle, going to like a 60, like 70,000 like seat Alamo Dome for your last college game.
Yeah, it's just it's the perfect story of March Madness, college basketball at its best. Like you said, this guy starts from complete humble beginnings and ends up if they win, he's going to be the most outstanding player of the Final Four. So pretty incredible.
Absolutely here. Troy, thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it. People want to follow you on social media. How can I do that?
Of course, yeah, you could follow me on Twitter at Troy Mauriello. That's Mauriello. If you're a St. John's fan, definitely check me out. I do a lot of tweeting about the Red Storm.
Yeah, so when the Johnnies are making their portal ads, Troy will be quick to tell you how he thinks they'll fit on Patino's squad next year.
Exactly. Right away, I got my rapid reactions on there. You can definitely check that out.
So before we go, prediction here is Bryce Hopkins coming to St. John. Do you think he goes somewhere else?
Yes, yeah, he's coming to St. John's. I'm about 99% confident in that he will be a Johnny by the time that we're recording this next week.
You're betting that Rapoli has the big check ready to go.
Yes, yeah, we wanted him. We wanted him last year, to be honest, and he didn't enter the portal. And again, no tampering though. No tampering goes on, right?
Of course not.
But yeah, we wanted him last year. He didn't portal. This year, I think we're gonna get the job done though.